I had a place directly across the street from me, and I come home late one night drinking, and they were doing a little construction on the block, and there was bricks around, laying all around in the street and everywhere. This was Skid Row, and there was a drunk sleeping in my doorway. So I step into my doorway with my key to open the door, and this drunk is there. And I look down, there's a couple of bricks there. So I pick them up, and I look across the street, and there's he just had a new neon sign put in his window, and it was blinking, open, open, open. So I took this fucking brick, and I sailed it, double header. Got the window, got the neon sign, and got whatever was behind that. Boom. I look, and there's a police car, and the siren goes on, the lights go on. So I step back into the doorway, still with the other brick in my hand. I look down at the drunken bum sleeping there in the doorway. I put the brick on his lap, and I go into the shop, close the door, and lock it. Here come the cop. I hear him rattling, shaking his old drunk up, and says, "Okay, you're coming to jail." And he took the poor guy and my brick, my ammunition. God damn it, Jesus. All through my life, they've asked me, "Well, what year was that?" I don't know years. I don't even know what day it is today. I worked for a Filipino man named Muzzy Enos. He had an old Hawaiian man working with him called Hawaiian Joe, who told me some fantastic stories about World War II and tattooing on Hotel Street.
Let's hear him.
No, I ain't going to tell you. He said that there were more tattoo shops on Hotel Street. Every other store was a tattoo shop. He said, and the lines of servicemen around the block, just from morning till night, just constant. He said that they couldn't tattoo anymore. They had to get sleep. He said that's how busy it was during World War II. And Sailor Jerry tattooed around the clock. Well, it sure was different when I was there, because Sailor Jerry was never there. I was there 3 months and never seen Sailor Jerry. Every time a sailor would come in with a bandage on, I'd say, "Where'd you get that?" "Around the corner at Sailor Jerry's." I'd run around the corner, closed already.
That fucking Sailor
That
Jerry.
fucking Sailor Jerry, Jesus Christ. But after a couple of weeks of Hawaii, I had enough of Hawaii. And I headed back to California, where I started another adventure. My life is one big adventure. And then Bob Shaw says to me, "You like pineapple juice, kid?" I says, "Yeah." He says, "I want you to go get me some." And he gave me some money. And he says, "Get yourself one." He says, "You go down to the pike here, down to one street, and you make a left, and you go down past the roller coaster, past the checkerboard lounge." He says, "You go a few doors past there, and you'll see a little juice place with fresh juice. They got the best pineapple juice in the world. Get me one, get yourself one." So out I start. I go past the checkerboard lounge, well, almost past it. I smelled the beer through the door. They had a curtain for a door, and I could smell the beer. I said, "I'll get a quick one." So in I go, and a chair comes flying in front of me. Boom, bounces off the floor. I look over, there's this big Samoan Hawaiian that we knew, friend of Bob Shaw's, and he's just throwing people around. So this guy bounces in front of me, so I smack the guy and throw him back. And the Hawaiian smiles, "Come, you drink with me," he says. And I sit down, and he gets me a drink. He says, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm going to get Bob Shaw the best pineapple juice in the world." "No," he says, "my country has the best pineapple juice. You come with me." We sat there and drank for a little while. I remember getting on a plane with this big Hawaiian. I remember getting off the plane with this big Hawaiian. I remember calling Bob Shaw and saying, he said to me, "Where the hell are you?" I says, "I'm getting you the best pineapple juice in the world." He says, "Where the fuck are you, in Hawaii?" I said, "Yeah, that's where I am. I'm getting you the best pineapple juice in the world." That's my pineapple juice story.
Did you ever bring him any juice?
No, I drank it. I put some rum in it. Sailor Jerry rum.
Shoe story. This was in the 60s sometime. And so I just had bought a nice new pair of shoes. And they were kind of an off-white looking things. And I had on a pair of Honolulu wool, which is tropical weight. At the time, back in the 60s, when you paid $150 for a pair of slacks, it was, whatever. And the shoes were probably, I don't know, $300 or $400. So once I thought, it's time for a break, we'll go see Jerry. So I hop on the plane over there, and I'm looking at these real nice off-white shoes and feeling really comfy and got a nice silk shirt on. So I stop in, of course, go right to Jerry's shop in a taxi. And he's sitting there with his Harley parked out in the front and the door wide open. When I came in the door, I wasn't aware of it, but I knew he had cased me out really good, and he didn't like what I was wearing. He hated it as much. And the next thing I know, I'm sitting right in front of him. The shop was a real tiny thing, like 20 by 20, and so we were real close together. And he's showing me this new Magnum needles he'd made up close. You got to get real close and look at this. So I scooch up, and he's showing me, and he says, now soldering them is so-and-so and such and such. And he quickly reaches back, grabs the solder, and comes forward with it to put it on the needles and on the needle bar. And when he does, he squirts out a 1/4 teaspoon size drop, and this acid hits right on my shoe, right here right on the big toe of my shoe here. And I didn't want to look down because I thought, oh my God, So after a minute or so goes by, I look down, here's this nice, big, dark, brown, ugly spot from the acid in the solder all over my new shoes, He didn't move his eyes, but he knew I was glancing down at my shoe and losing focus on his conversation, telling me about the needles. Right off the bat, he started this because he saw those shoes. As soon as I came to the door, he knew exactly what to do to blow my mind. All of a sudden, he looks down and says, oh, shit, what happened there? Oh, my God, and he just reaches down with these monstrous hands of his and grabs me by the foot, picks it up here about like so. He reaches over and gets some white tattooing, because they were like off-white shoes. And he puts a couple of drops on it, takes a Kleenex out of the Kleenex box like we use on the customers, and starts wiping it around about 3 times. He says, there, how's that? And he lets my foot go, and he grabs the needles again and starts with his story. And I'm going, oh my God, I should have never, I just didn't know what to say. I was just speechless. He says, well, let's go eat. I'm going to close up and go eat. Now he wants me to parade out in the street with his messed up shoes on. Oh, he got the biggest kick out of that. I think he wrote a letter to some of us. We should have seen Zeke. We went to Hotel Street to eat in the Italian restaurant with this big black and brown and white tattooing all over his shoes, One night I was tattooing in there, and this guy walks into the tattoo shop, and he was a big, husky guy and old, and he had one of those real typical broken noses that comes down, and he had cauliflower ears. He asked me about my sterilizer, and he'd heard about these sterilizer things, and he says, I don't see much use for them. So I decided to try something to prove it to myself that sterilizing, it's something in the ink that kills all the germs, he says. And I'm going, okay. So he takes some needles from upstairs in his tattoo shop and goes down to the sidewalk, goes out to the curb. He's got a couple of liners and a couple of shaders. And, oh, by the way, there was a cat house next door, right? And at nighttime, about 4 o'clock in the morning, when they were all through over there, he would bring the girls would bring their pots, rinse-out pots, down to the sidewalk and dump them in the curb, and they were on a little hill, so it would run down the hill. That was the dump for their pots. I don't know if they had a head in there or not, but that's what happened. He says, I very carefully took these needles, and I laid them down in the gutter right where they would dump their pots right over them like that. And he says, I left those needles there for about a week. He says, I figured that was long enough. And I went back there, and nobody was looking, and pulled the needles out, you know, went in. He says, I didn't even wipe them off. I remember he told me that. And I put them in the machine. He says, the next day I opened it up. And he says, and he also had these big black fish scales on his arm. And he says, he holds his big arm like this, and he goes, see all this out here, all these scales? And I said, yes, sir. He says, well, I tattooed myself over their veins and everything with them needles. And he says, you see anything wrong with me? He looks like that. And I said, no, sir. And he turned around and shook his head and walked out the door, you know. That was Danny Danzel. He used to tattoo with another guy called ABC Hank. So they were quite a pair together.